So I'm unabashedly a cold weather person. I love it when it's 50 degrees, when the fog is rolling in, when I have an opportunity to wear a hoodie or a crew neck or my Carhartt. And I even saw earlier today that I think this summer is actually the coldest summer that San Francisco has had since like 1984, which is just straight up music to my ears. But I will say there is something incredibly nostalgic about a southern night when the hot, humidity, almost unbearable nature of a day gives way to this. I don't even know how to describe it. I wish I was a poet and I can describe this more flowery than the way I am now. But there's just something about it that really can't be replicated unless you kind of go through, again, just the mugginess of a day, and it gives way to this, the beauty of night. Anyway, that's enough waxing poetic for today, but a lot to get into from today, a day that's been packed from pregame to now. And beginning with the pregame news that we got today, Hayden Birdsong was optioned to AAA Sacramento. Tristan Beck was optioned to Sacramento as well, and we'll get into Beck in a second. But this was something that we saw coming after last night's outing when, of course, Birdsong didn't record a single out, and it was really the nadir of what had been a continuation of a couple starts where he had just been unable to command the ball. And I had a stat in my story last night where over the first 52 and 2/3 innings of Birdsong's sophomore season, he only walked 20 batters, whereas over the last 13, and that also does include the non-inning that he threw last night, over the last 13, he walked 17 batters, and of course he gives up 5 runs on 4 walks, a hit by pitch, and just the 1 lone hit. So there was obviously some stuff that Birdsong was going to need to work on, and the question was, were the Giants going to allow him to work on those things at the major league level, or were they going to option him to AAA Sacramento and have him work those things out with the River Cats? And they made that decision following last night's game where they optioned Birdsong to AAA Sacramento. And obviously there isn't a timetable as to when Birdsong is going to be back with the major league club. Melvin did say, he was very complimentary of Birdsong in the macro view. He said, I can't remember the exact quote, but something to the effect of him believing that Birdsong is going to be a horse in this rotation for years to come, but obviously that time is not right now. So now this is going to be an opportunity, kind of similar to Tyler Fitzgerald, where Birdsong is going to go back down to AAA, have this opportunity to reset, have this opportunity to correct some things that he may not have been able to do under the pressure of the major league level, especially considering that the Giants, with last night's loss, were on a 6-game losing streak. Obviously, they're not anymore with tonight's 9-0 win, which, again, we will get to in a moment. Now, as far as Tristan Beck, it was one of those things where the Giants were a little torn up about it. Melvin was torn up about it, and he said that in his conversation with President of Baseball Operations, Buster Posey, he felt the same way because Beck has really been invaluable over the course of this road trip, this 4-game road trip. During Friday's 9-5 loss to the Toronto Blue Jays, Justin Verlander wasn't able to get through the 3rd inning. I think he only pitched 2 2/3. So Tristan Beck ended up pitching 4 1/3 innings of long relief. It was essentially a start on no notice, and he really saved the bullpen on Friday night from having to go through 4 or 5 relievers. I don't remember how many relievers they ended up using, but really saved the bullpen. And then during Monday's game, Beck retired all 4 batters that he faced. But given that he pitched 6 2/3 innings over a 4-day span, he wasn't going to be available today. He likely wasn't going to be available on Wednesday. So the Giants made the tough decision, to option him down, of course, to AAA Sacramento. And Melvin did say that he will be back at some point this season. In the place of Birdsong and Beck were Carson Seymour, as well as Sean Jelly. And despite Seymour in particular being someone that the Giants view as a starter, him and Carson Whisenhunt are kind of next up as far as starters. The Giants didn't announce that Seymour was going to take Birdsong's spot in the rotation. They didn't announce that anyone in particular was going to take that spot in the rotation. As I mentioned, they do have the off day on Thursday after wrapping up this series on Wednesday. So it looks like it's going to be one of those things that the Giants figure out once they get back to San Francisco. And they do have a lot of in-house options. Again, as we've talked about previously, not a ton of major league experience among those in-house options. Again, I think the most experienced one that they have right now outside of Birdsong is Keaton Wynn, and as I mentioned in yesterday's video, Keaton Wynn is still recovering from the right shoulder injury that kept him out for roughly 3 months. So it'll be interesting to see what the Giants do, where the Giants go, but this kind of highlights the need for the Giants to potentially acquire some starting pitching depth at the trade deadline. There's potentially some options available. The thing with the expanded playoffs is that it feels like there are fewer sellers and more buyers, just considering there are more teams with an opportunity to get into the playoffs, but there's potentially some options out there with the few sellers that do want to sell. So one of those things that, as the Giants get closer and closer to the July 31st trade deadline, an avenue that they're going to potentially have to explore. The other big element, the other big pregame news to come out of today's game was that Rafael Devers was inserted into the starting lineup as a first baseman. This was obviously the first time he's not only playing first base with the Giants, it's not just the first time he's playing first base this year. It is the first time that he's played first base as a professional. It's something that he's never done in the majors with the Boston Red Sox prior to being traded. And of course, there was the whole saga with him not wanting to play after they moved him from third base to DH with the Bregman signing. That whole ordeal, which we don't really need to get into that can of worms rather. But he's never played it in the minors. The only position that he's played in the majors and the minors is third base as well as designated hitter. So this was going to be his first opportunity, his first test to get into a game situation. And as Melvin said, prior to the game, he's been working at first base before games for the better part of the last month since being acquired by the Giants. He's been taking grounders, he's been fielding throws, he's been going over situations, things of that nature. But until you actually get into a game, there's just really no preparing for what a game is going to feel like. And of course, we're in the middle of a season, we're not in spring training, and so there is going to have to be a lot of learning on the fly in regards to Devers, and we'll get into this more in regards to the game. But one important element of this is kind of the Bryce Eldridge piece of this, where Rafael Devers, as of right now, not going to play first base every day, but once he gets more comfortable with that position, once he starts to heal more and more from the groin and the back ailments, and those are the two things that have really pushed back this timeline as to when he was going to make his first base debut. In addition to those, again, the Bryce Eldridge piece of this, Devers is going to play first base for right now. Bryce Eldridge is going to make his debut at some point, whether that's this year, next year, that's to be determined. But the Giants are going to have to figure out which of those two is going to be their true long-term first baseman. Is it going to be Devers, the person who is still figuring out the third base position, or is it going to be Bryce Eldridge, who's another guy who's also learning the first base position, though he does have a little more experience at the position, having picked it up last year prior to the 2024 season and playing it this year as well. As far as the game itself, I know that was a lot of rambling as far as the pregame element of things, but the Giants snapped their 6-game losing streak with a 9-0 win over the Atlanta Braves. It is tied for their largest margin of victory this season. Again, snaps the 6-game losing streak. They are now 53-49 on this season. And if last night was a game where there was few things that went right for the Giants, tonight was a game where a lot went right for the Giants. Again, the 9 runs that they scored is one of the few kind of offensive outbursts, one of the rare offensive outbursts that this team has had, and they got contributions up and down the lineup. Devers in his first game as a first baseman, I think it's the 2 hits, 2 runs scored, and RBI. Casey Schmidt hit his 5th homer of the year. It landed in the second deck out there in left field. Wilmer Flores hit his 13th homer of the year, a 3-run shot in, I believe, the top of the 7th that made it into a 9-run game. Devers, Chapman, and Patrick Bailey had 2-hit games. Willie Adames drew 3 walks. So a lot of contributions up and down this lineup. And again, a rare offensive outburst when we've kind of seen this lineup be very inconsistent with the amount of offense that it gets on a night-to-night basis. Landon Root pitching 5 innings, not exactly the longest outing in the world for him, but it was especially impressive given that after the game he said it wasn't just one of the hottest conditions that he's pitched under, but he did say that it was also very difficult to breathe at times given how hot it was on the mound, and he said that it did impact his stuff as well. His stuff wasn't moving as much as it usually does, and the Braves had him go through some pretty lengthy innings. I think in the first inning he threw 20 pitches. I want to say it was the third inning he had to throw 27 pitches. So they definitely made him work on the mound. Definitely did not make life easy, but he did have, I believe it was an 8-pitch fourth inning, but lowers the ERA on the season, 3.11 on the season now. And we've mentioned this before, but Roop has really emerged as a very solid number 3 option in this rotation behind Logan Webb as well as Robbie Ray at the top of the rotation. Jung-Hoo Lee didn't get a hit in this game, but made a nifty sliding catch in the outfield as well, and that's worth noting, especially given that his kind of lack of urgency on that throw yesterday allowed Ronald Acuna Jr. to score from first base on a single up the middle. And I know that we as reporters are not allowed to cheer for anything in particular, but the one thing that I'm going to be cheering for is a relatively quick game. The tarp is currently out on the field. There are thunderstorms in the forecast for tomorrow. I have a flight at 7:45, 12:15 scheduled first pitch, and obviously Cobb County is not downtown Atlanta. I don't know how long it would take to get from here to the Atlanta airport, and I don't exactly want to find out how long it can take under stressful conditions. So we'll see where we go from here.